Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and again, uh, during our design journey and as a armchair tabletop role-playing game designer and producer of content here on the interwebs, I like to talk about sometimes big-brained issues. And one of the issues I listen to, let me give you some context. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I have the benefit and horror of having a job in which I'm in my own head most of the day. I don't have very many conversations with people. I am a letter carrier, so I drive and walk the streets, and in that regard, I am able to listen in on very many things. Unfortunately, the hard part of that is that I'm unable to participate in a lot of social media interactions. I can listen in, but I don't work at a desk. But when I listen into many of these things, um, especially long form content, I'm able to absorb some of the nuance because people are able to express themselves. And I like to listen to, amongst other geeky things, I like to listen to game design podcasts, people who are expressing themselves in how they're designing a game, some of the how they market their creations, the world building, and all the things involved in it. And yeah, yeah, exactly. Listen to podcasts so I don't go postal, or maybe I make a role playing game about it. Um, but one of the things I was listening to, and from a designer's point of view, is, and listen, I'm glad I'm surrounded by you guys because it I happen to feel like there's a cornucopia, an overexpression of understanding and brilliance and deep thought that, it, as an aggregate of a larger community and larger interwebs, doesn't exist. So I love individuals who are down for discussing how the sausage is made. And I listened to this podcast, and the designer, I believe from Gila RPGs, Gila RPGs, or I guess it's Taito Mincy or something, mentioned something about designing a game, and then he realized, he stopped and was like, "Why do I have like a hit point system? Why do we bother having hit point systems at all?" Now, as a designer, you go, "Yeah, why do we do that?" It would be like saying to a cook, why do we bother using heat to cook items, or why do we add um I don't know, sauce or some kind of a sheen, nonstick sheen to a pan? Why do it's it is the dissemination, it is the taking apart, it is finding the framework and the bits and pieces that make the foundation, and questioning, well, why do we do it this way? Why do we have a table with four legs? Now, mind you, some people would say, well, it's pretty obvious. We have a table with four legs because we want it to be stable. And someone can come along and go, well, we could add more legs, or we could have less legs. Yeah, absolutely, Drew. The deconstruction of a thing. That's what happens when you go live, right? It's like your brain goes in other directions. The deconstruction of how a mechanism works. And there's this design spiral we go through because, much as we've seen recently, when our most famous, our most prolific designers create things, they get pushback from the public. For example, I've been following a bit of the design of Daggerheart from Critical Role, Darrington Press, whatever, and they didn't have an initiative system. And there are people like, well, how are we supposed to play the game? Who gets to go first? I don't understand. Well, they need to have some kind of initiative system. Or what else happens with in Daggerheart? Oh, you're rolling two 12-sided dice. One is hope, one is fear. And it's like, well, Does that mean every round, every time someone rolls the dice, we're going to have to describe these strange things like, oh, you can succeed, but you have a fear, which means there's something negative, or you could fail, but your highest die is a hope die, so then it's something good. It's like, well, how are we going to do that? I don't understand. And it's like, well, the designers are trying to come up with a new way of expression in role-playing games that deconstructs what we already know. Hit points, armor class. I pick with the top five, right? Hit points, armor class, alignment, um, um, class level progression, and what's another one? There's something else out there that's like very common that people argue about. Initiative is another one, right? And these are like the big things that, well, classic Dungeons and Dragons has this. You should change it. You should be a designer that gets rid of all of those. You need to be more creative, and someone does it, and the public is like, well, what am I supposed to do without it? And as designers, we realize that either some of those mechanisms are non-applicable any longer. We don't need them any longer. Sometimes as designers, we say, well, the words and terminology you're using might not be appropriate. So the thing may still exist, but we're just going to rename it, reflavor it, interpret what you're seeing. And even that can rub people the wrong way. The design spiral. Or someone says, well, we're mature adults. We really don't need that any longer. We're creative individuals. The hive mind of the table is far more brilliant than you as an individual. Use the hive mind to come up with how you're going to adjudicate such a thing. Or there may be a rule, like a strong game engine, like roll a d20 and add a modifier, or add up your dice pool and find the highest die, or roll 3dx and beat the number 10 or 25 or something like that. And that is the engine that solves the issue you're talking about. And yet, even then, as designers, we have to sit back and go, okay, how do we explain what we mean with the fewest words possible? And then come to find out that it it wasn't really necessary and people didn't want that in the first place. Um, there's a side note, like a side tangent of, let me get a little squirrely here, of the design spiral, is when players, the community, demands something into a game or a genre that we know as designers will detract from the play experience, um, even though it fits into the genre. So what I mean by that is, we see this often with crafting systems. Everyone wants a crafting system. How do I craft magic items and magical artifacts and craft spells in fantasy gaming? But it can come across, we know as designers, we go, well, I could add this in, but it's a little masturbatory, meaning like, yes, it will benefit you as an individual, but it doesn't add anything to the game experience. How do the other players add to it? And then how do you balance it? Great. You love the game. You go off by yourself. You craft yourself 17 magical incantations and magic items for your character. Come back to the table, and everyone's like, well, where'd that come from? You're like, well, I crafted things when we didn't play for the last 2 weeks. Like, well, that's unfair. How does the warrior benefit from that? How do the rest of us who don't have the time or methods? How do we get involved? How do we make this a gaming aspect of our combined gaming experience? The same thing goes for hacking and like modern day and cyberpunk, like hacking computer systems, and everyone sits back and twiddles their thumbs. Piloting is another issue. Um, Designing high tech objects is another one that's an issue where you're just like, great, so you're the creator and the rest of us sit back, like, what do we do? And so as designers, that's just a side note tangent, but getting rid of the staples, initiative, hit points, alignment systems, it's very strange how, as a deconstructionist designer that we feel bullish about getting rid of certain things, and then when it's implemented, or we feel like, yeah, you know what, I think the community would really approve of this, and then the community looks at it and goes, well, we want new things, but it doesn't work. So let me give you an example of getting rid of things, and as a designer coming at it from a different point of view, and realizing that how the sausage is made. Sometimes people don't, they craft new sausage, but they really don't want to know how the sausage is made. But in order to do that, you can't make new sausage unless you know what's in it. It's horrible, horrible analogy. So the other day I talked about the about how death is both a meta and in-world thing in games that people want and don't want. Although they may claim they want it and don't want it. So, for example, character death in role-playing games doesn't need to mean that the character dies. Character death in a game in a meta sense means it's a character that can't be used any longer. That means a character that's arrested, transported to a far-off dimension, retires, has no more will to engage, um, is transformed, maybe loses their wealth or power or political influence or anything like that. Anytime a character cannot be used in a game, that character is dead. But it doesn't mean that that character physically dies. Yet you'll hear often in the uh, TTRPG community, well, the game isn't really a game unless death is on the table. Yet we see many games, classic fantasy D20, that stack multiple methods of not having your character die, and the threat of death being so rare that when it does happen, everyone looks around and goes, well, there must be something wrong. There's no way you should be able to die. Yet in order to achieve death in public commons, fifth edition 2014 version, like, you have to go out of your way as a dungeon master to kill a player. And even if you wanted to do that, the mechanism, like, for example, the the air quotes surefire way to kill a player character in fifth edition Dungeons and Dragons is you have to get one player to be far enough away from the fastest moving player character, b, put them in a position where uh, they may hear where the player is, but the visual acuity of the players is not possible, meaning the player can't visually pinpoint where they are at. So they have to be behind cover, or somehow have their visual disrupted, because if you can see something, you can target it with like arcane spells and whatnot. So now you have to have those two. Then you have to do enough damage to drop a character to 0 hit points, which is fine. Possible, but it's fine. And then yeah, Drew's like, kill a player? You mean their character, right? Yeah, I did. I was wondering if somebody would catch that, because I realized I did that myself. It's the characters, not the players. Although I think if listening to Ben Milton's Questing Beast, he had another I read a quote from um D&D X edition, and the people in the show had to guess which edition it was, and they did that. They were like, oh, when the dungeon master kills a player, and it was just like, yeah, it was actually written in there like that. But to kill a character, sorry, a player, that's another legal thing if you want to start killing players. So killing a character, um after you do drop them to 0 hit points, now you have to decide that your enemies are going to pile on the rabbit on that PC, to drop them not just below 0 hit points, but to keep trying to get crits on a downed character to outright kill them. And even then, you may not be able to do so, because there is no insta kill just because a character is incapacitated. You have to do enough a premium amount of damage. And even if you did that, then How many players would be like, "You're a killer DM because the shark kept trying to consume my," "You're a killer DM because the kraken tried to swallow my downed character who was underwater," and blah blah blah. It's just like, and that's just death as an example. So when I was listening to this podcast and I heard the designer say, I don't know why we bother having hit points for our enemies. Um, why, if if minions can just be hit and killed, why bother giving them any kind of number value to their survivability? They're either up or they're down. Why bother having it? And then he said, okay, well, if that's the case, then maybe players don't need to do damage. Like they don't need to have a number value to do damage. Maybe they just have an ability to strike. And they use that ability to strike, whether it's in close range or grappling or distance. And we just need to know the distance, but we don't need to know the damage value. Like maybe they can do an area effect, but they apply an equal strike to everything in that area. And again, I was in my head, as a designer, I'm listening to this and I'm going, well, that makes sense. But I'm like, players like rolling dice and players like knowing that they do damage, but is the damage, are numbers related to output a benefit to them because it boosts their ego against their other players? Like, are we applying damage values? My character does 18 points of damage. Your character's maximum is only 12. Is that because we're trying to puff our chests out as a player? Because my character is designed better than the others? And are we, is damage values in games a measure of ego? you know, it may, now I'm listening to this and it's going through my head. Now, the designer did not mention that, but in my head, I'm thinking of it. And I'm going, "Ooh, this is dangerous territory," because you know, role playing games are escapists. It's not about having us look in the mirror, looking at the man in the mirror, and going, "Oh, maybe I'm a bit of a narcissist or egoist. Maybe I'm a bit of a megalomaniac, trying to live out my sociopathic tendencies in a tabletop role playing game and didn't realize it." Okay, so the designer goes on to say, "Well, how do we adjudicate enemies that are, air quotes, have higher damage resistance without doing any numerical value?" And he's like, well, maybe they have some kind of resistance to a thing. Like maybe they are resistant to fire damage, or they can't be hurt because they have armor on, or they are very quick and can't be touched unless they are restrained in some kind of way. And then he's like, well, we could add these tags or layers of resistance onto our enemies, which means, hey, the enemy has armor or shielding. And then if you have an ability that can remove that shielding, then any other character could then strike, no numerical value, then they can be struck. So if they have a shield, boom, bing, 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 nothing happens. But I have something known as sunder or rending that can rend through armor. I have a sunder, so I can sunder through a shield, and then that takes down the shield. Okay, now let's say the enemy has a shield and armor. So someone sunders the shield, bang, someone pierces the armor, boom. Now someone can take their strike and hit it, and then that's 3 levels, and it's like a puzzle. And he was thinking, well, instead of hit points, why don't we have a puzzle set? So yes, I am simplifying a conversation that this individual is having in a live stream for design. And these are the things that we as designers go through constantly when designing games. And it is the removal of the classic hit points and armor class. It is the removal of movement rates and initiative. And it is coming up with new ways of us um, engaging in this collective imaginary worlds that we have in our minds and online and at the in person. And we really, as designers, we really want to engage in this kind of stuff. And it's difficult to sell it when we hear in our ears and we hear in the community, do something new. And then when something new comes out, why did you do something new? We like the old. Drew says, I discarded the idea of damage for my system since I am in for a narrative experience, not a combat one. And see, I fall into that category. And as I get older, I'm an old man anyway, but I'm an old grognard. But yeah, I find that damage values fade away for myself as well. It's why Powered by the Apocalypse games sometimes rub people the wrong way, because Powered by the Apocalypse systems don't have a built-in combat focused. It's like, well, how do you do combat if you're just rolling dice and doing partial successes and failures? And it's like, well, it's if we were to look at our favorite action-oriented movies or television shows, that's what we see, right? I mean, we see our we don't see hit points in action movies. We see people running, jumping, falling, being injured, holding their kidney, having their shoulder dislocated, having their hand broken, but they move on and they slide, jump, and twist and dodge out of the way. And it's like, well, we're not watching hit points. We're watching um, fluid activity of gain and loss, and it's success with cost, um, failure, but still moving forward, right? And trying to create a mechanized system of that is very interesting. Drew says, also, could you put the link to the podcast into your description box or the comments? I would love to listen to that. Okay, I will get that right now. So let's see. Let's go to YouTube. So I'm going to pull this up on YouTube and just get to my my histories and listen to it. The individual in question while I do this, because I try to keep you guys interested in this in some kind of way. Um, so the gentleman is a game designer, and Gil. So let's do this first. Um, Gila RPGs. Yes, I want to go there. um, so, boo, 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 boo. Let's put a number of these things up here. Spencer Campbell. Thank you very much, DBJ. I'll put all the links in. So, hey, Shinobi, what's going on there? Uh, so, so this is the website to the creation, and then here is, let's see if I can find the exact one where he mentions not having, is it Luna? There it is. Come on, where there is my history. Um mm, 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 mm. 28 years later. I was looking up stuff about 28 years later. Uh Hilarious. I'm an idiot. there there we go. That's what I want. I want the link. I want the share link. There we go. Copy. Oof. Boy, I'm a Luddite. All right. So um it's funny because the Spencer Campbell was talking about a game that he designed, and he has a world of role playing games. And he designed Lumen, and Lumen begat something known as Light, which begat something known as Nova, which begat. This is all happening in the same world ish and using kind of the same rules. The rules that he has for his game world are constantly moving. So he's like, I've got Lumen and Lumen 2.0, and he's like, he wants to get rid of die rolls. So he's like, why are we rolling dice? Because we want a random effect. But the game is about power fantasies. So why would we have randomization when we know our players are capable? So it goes on and on and on. And the idea behind it. Oh, let me look up Titanomancy. Yep, there it is. And maybe just copy and this, copy and paste this one too, because he's got an itch.io account. There it is. Amongst other people, there's layout design and other people that are other than this one individual. But I love listening to designers talk about things. Like, for example, Matt Colville's game and the talking about the power roll and how do you roll 2d6 because he has a his main mechanic in the game is a 2 die 6 system, but his problem was okay, we love this bell curve where rolling anything closer to 2 or a 12 on 2 die 6 is very difficult, and then everything in the middle 7 6 7 8 is happens more often, but at the same time they want to have a variation on damage and things like that. So how do we do that if everything starts to fall towards the middle? And so they came up with this power roll system where the more rare die roll you have, everything falls along this power roll system. So fire damage, it runs along and I don't remember the number ranges they use, but it was like 2 to 7 is common, 8 to 9 is uncommon, and then 10, 11, 12 is rare. And so the common amount of like fire damage would do one thing, but the uncommon amount would not only just would you burn, but you would continue to burn. And then maybe the last one, this is me making it up. I'm not saying this is part of the game, but the design intent was, well, if somebody rolls a 10 or 11 or 12 on 2d6, not only do you continue burning, but maybe it burns something very important on your character. Like you got to make a saving throw for your to keep your cloak or your rope or your magic item burning or something like that, right? And if everyone knows what a power roll is, 2 to 7, 8 to 9, 10 to 12, then when you roll the 2d12, everyone knows, oh, you rolled an 11. Ooh, and it could be a mind blast. It could be a teleportation spell. It could be summoning an elemental. It could be, all of these things. And it's like, ooh, you rolled initiative. You rolled an 11. That means you get an extra attack. Wow. Or you get an extra movement, right? Or whatever. You get a healing burst or something. Everyone knows not only is it rare, but something special is going to happen. Now we just need to figure out what that special thing is. And these are just design examples of when designers speak out loud. Yeah, Shinobi says, yeah, it's an MCDM channel for those that want to see it. Very cool design voice. Yeah, and I love listening to designers because to catch Shinobi up, there are, like in the thumbnail, I was like, no armor class, no initiative, no hit points, right? We start taking away these standards in games as designers, and people beg for things that are new. But when we figure out how the sausage is made and let people know it and go, guess what? We're not going to have an initiative system. Sometimes people go, well, how are we going to do that? For example, I remember playing in a game and we did something known as popcorn initiative. So popcorn initiative is you one person gets to act first. Well, and you'll find out how this works. You only need to find out who gets to act first when initiative is needed, when or not initiative, when the series of each individual's actions is mandatory. All you need to do is figure out who goes first. After that, we popcorned. So popcorn initiative doesn't use any dice. You go first there, Shinobi, and you perform your action, and then you pick someone else, an ally or the enemy, the game master, me, to then go, and then if you pick me, then I pick someone else, and it popcorns around. Now, does this lend itself to, well, all the players want to go all at the same time, like one and right after another? Sure. The rule was that we had like a time limit. We had like a 30-second time limit. Like you got to pick the next person. So tactically speaking, it wasn't like, oh, well, let's spend 15 minutes to figure out how we can optimize who wants to go first. It's like you got 30 seconds. Come on, popcorn, right? Pop, 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 pop. And And someone could say, oh, let me go next because then I can do this thing. And if you're the popcorner, you're the one to pick the next kernel to pop. You go, oh, that's really cool. Okay, you go next. And it was quick, 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 quick. That's how we did it. Now, you might say, well, if the enemy goes last, guess what? If I'm the game master and I go last at the end of the round, whoever, however that falls, when the next round starts and we start this cycle all over again, that person or individual or agent begins the next round. So you only need to know who goes first the very first time. After that, whoever goes last gets to act first and we start the popcorn all over. So if the enemy doesn't go down, they get a double strike coming up next. The last player character who does something, right? Let's say the healer, the cleric is picked to go last. They heal and then they start the next thing all over again. Maybe they could heal twice. So it was very much like, well, whoever gets to go last is like, oh, but they kind of get a double action, if that makes sense. So that it makes up for it. And that's how the popcorn went. But how how do you explain that? And would players go for that? Because that's kind of what the dagger heart system was before they came up with the thing. Like, yeah, yeah, Shinobi. And that's just an example. I'm not saying you should use it. What I'm talking globally here with yourself and Drew and other designers, that we get into this design spiral where we want to break the rules, or we find out that the rule that we're following doesn't matter, like getting rid of hit points. When that designer when Spencer Campbell was like, you know what? Why do we bother having hit points? It's it, the his rationale was the only reason for having numbers is on the player side. Hey, my character does more damage than yours, but as far as enemies go, minions, we don't care about their hit points. You hit a goblin, they go down. Why do we bother having hit points for them? And if we have an enemy that is tougher, do we really want to do a 75 point, 116 hit point slog and just keep getting numbers lower, or do we want to puzzle our way through the encounter? Is a troll dangerous because it has 60 hit points, or is it dangerous because the only way to kill it is you must get past its burn, you know always returns because unless burned puzzle for the players to figure it out, so that one of the characters so goes, hey, a pyromancer. I will burn the troll so that someone else could lop off its head, right? And in terms of like initiative, damage causing, armor class, like, and very early on in fantasy gaming, what happens is we bump up against even the semantics of a game, that the words don't mean what they say. Hit points aren't really hit points. Armor class isn't really armor class, and we bump up against these things and we go, well, let's design something better. Let's have a wound system or a body part system or a stress, a bruising bleeding system or something for physical games. Maybe there are mental games. Let's have mental. Maybe we don't want physical damage. Maybe we want uh, mental stress or wealth system or political advantage like clout or grit or something, and we just call it something different. And I remember doing this as an experiment where I took all the basic words in fantasy D20 and renamed them and said, hey guys, I came up with this new game. And I just took the classic six stats, strength, dex, con, blah, 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 and just renamed them, renamed armor class, renamed hit points, renamed alignment, renamed classes and levels. And someone was just like, I don't understand this game. They were just like, I don't get it. I mean, why would you? And I was like, but it's the same game. It's just different words. And it just blew their mind. They were just like, I don't know if I would play this game. I'm like, but you already played it. It's just, instead of strength, it's muscle or force or lifting or whatever. Instead of dex, it's like dynamics or speed or flexibility or reflexes, or like, what's the difference? Drew says my initiative system is the scene The scene lead goes first. That is a thing in my system. Okay. After that, whoever was interacted. It moved. Okay, sorry. Here we go. Um, I'll put it up here. Yeah, my initiative system is the scene lead goes first. That is the thing in my system. After that, whoever was interacted with goes next. Thus, if an enemy gets attacked, that enemy can directly retaliate. Makes perfect sense to me, and I love it. I absolutely love it. And what I love about that idea is, hey, player, if you engage with the troll and you go, I want to strike the troll, guess what? The troll gets to smack you back in the face. Yeah, that's what happened. That makes perfect sense. Now, will they be successful in doing so? No, but I can feel the cold fingers crawling up my spine where a player goes, fold arms, pout, bottom lip gets pouted out. That doesn't make any sense. My fighter's going to get hit if my fighter goes to strike the troll. Well, that's unfair. I should just stay back, right? And it's like, well, you do realize this is a game, so you may or may not succeed, and you may or may not succeed or fail and stuff. And you know, there's a lot of times where, like, we players will assume a percentage as a guarantee, right? Like if something 70% happens, or something happens 70% of the time, it is looked at as happening 100% of the time. Sometimes our perception of percentages is off, and we as designers almost want to shake people and go, no, that's not the case. It's like a favorite movie, and someone will look up on Rotten Tomatoes and go, it's got an 86% um you know fresh rating, right? Fresh and spoil rating, right? Rotten Tomatoes. And it's like, it's 86%. Most people like it. And then someone will go, well, that doesn't make any sense because I didn't like the movie. And I'm just going, oh, then apparently you don't fall into the 86th percentile, right? You fall into the other percentage that didn't like it. That's what that means. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means that you fall into the category of the people that didn't like it. Drew says only if someone who has already acted would come next. The current player can pass the initiative to whoever they like, which means the enemy who retaliated can let another enemy act next. I love it. I love it too. And why not? Now, it could be, I could see the system being used, what you're describing there, Drew, as there tactically, it may be good to allow someone who has not acted to act first before you, to elicit a reaction out of them. So you elicit an action, so you're getting a reaction to know what they're going to do, or getting them to act in a way so that they've already performed an action, so then later on an enemy could then take advantage of that. So the troll goes to grabs the cloak of the wizard, which then, go ahead, fightor, now your act. So now the fightor closes with the troll, but in that action there's a giant spider in the ceiling, and oops, pull the fighter in close. Now the spider drops down. You know what I mean? Like, it could do something like that. I'm just talking about fantasy, but you get my point. And which I like initiative systems that way. If I'm not mistaken, the Daggerheart system now has an air quotes initiative system that uses the tokens. And I like the idea of every time you act, you hand a token to the to the dungeon master or the game master, storyteller, whatever, narrator, whatever. You warden, you give them a token, and now they're like, "Ooh, I've got 6 tokens. Now let me lay down the law," right? Like, oh, and yet all the PCs are like, "Shit, damn it, maybe we shouldn't do this. Maybe we should let the enemies go a few more times instead of handing over 4, 5, 6, 8 tokens to the storyteller, who then gets to lay down the law with these 8 extra actions or something." Drew says, I call my stress system friction. I love wording. Uh, since it is since it is mostly about social friction and how alienated the characters are from their environment. I love that. That sounds like a social anxiety neurodivergent game. like individuals who are constantly pushed and pulled as how they fit into the environment they're in, whether it's a physical environment like myself getting lost in the woods, right? Or myself navigating a dinner party, or myself navigating work stress, or navigating a new city I moved to, or something like that. I like that. I like friction. I like it. I'm not going to steal it, but I want to as a designer. Let me be honest. I love it. Yeah. Shinobi says, I find it interesting how some people get so locked into a specific system and any change throws them off so much. But I think my friend said it best. She doesn't like to think on her time off. Now, that I have to agree with that when we come up with, as designers, these are things that we are pushing. It's the we are the Atlas pushing the boulder uphill. Is it Atlas that did that? I can't remember. Anyway, one of the Greek stories about the, okay, sorry, Greek myth pushing. There we go. Okay. I can't remember. Sisyphus, Sisyphus. Sisyphus, yeah. He was king of Corinth and became infamous for his general trickery when he twice cheated death. Sisyphus ultimately got his comeuppance when Zeus dealt him the eternal punishment of forever rolling a boulder up a hill in the depths of Hades. I believe there's a level in uh, Planescape that is a plane that is on a the entire plane of existence is on a hill that slides. Anyway, I thought it was Atlas. Atlas holds the world up. Sisyphus pushes the boulder. Sorry. So the the pushing the boulder uphill for us as designers, game designers, is that thing that you just mentioned, Shinobi. Where let me put this back up. Uh, Players want to engage in the game, and they don't want to have to think so much on their time off. They want to sit down and play the game, which is why so many rules light games are in existence. They take up less space on your phone, printing out, take up less space up in the brain skull, and they they take up less cognitive space when we sit down. And a lot of the language, yeah, Atlas holds the heavens up. Yeah, dead man. Yeah. I was like, I just, well, they both are holding a thing up. Although I got to admit, in a superhero game, Squirrel, we had players and their headquarters was in the globe of a globe being held up by Atlas during a World's Fair, and the World's Fair ended and it was vacant around it, but the Atlas and the globe still existed, and that's where their base of operations was. Go ahead and steal the idea. I could care less. um, and because it was the globe, when they needed to arrive to stop world problems, they the outside of the globe would glow, and then the players could arrive there. They were transported there. Techno magically. Anyway, it's a whole thing. Very comic booky, very superhero ish. But the point is of the rolling the boulder uphill analogy. Thank you, Sisyphus, in the Greeks. As designers, sometimes we design games for the sole purpose of going, guess what? You don't need to have that much cognitive load to play this game. Um, the Gila RPG for a Caltrop core is literally a D4 system. Guess what? Roll a D4. On a 1, you don't get what you want. On a 2, you you, you don't get what you want, but you kind of move forward. On a 3, you don't exact you get what you want, but then there's a complication. On a 4, you get what you want. 4, you either on a 1 or a 4, you don't get it or you get it. And then 2 and 3 is a mix of you don't get it, but it's something good. You get it, but you get something bad. And that's it, right? And a lot of times in games, we are trying to get rid of the cognitive load. And sometimes we as players, that play these games, we embrace a cognitive load that probably wasn't necessary in the first place. Let me give you an example. Um, Level progression versus levels of spells in fantasy Dungeons and Dragons. The same word meaning two different things, having to cognitively separate the two when I believe his Tales of the Valiant, instead of calling them spell levels, they call them circles. And all of a sudden, it was like people were just like, well, I don't understand. I mean, if it's just character levels and spell circles, how are we supposed to figure it out? And I'm going, it wasn't it harder the other way? Right? Yeah. Yes, as designers, we are burdened with glorious purpose. Exactly. Sometimes, and I don't disagree with you, Shinobi, and I don't disagree with your friend, but there are games that have a more complexity, and the reason is because um we we have internalized the complexity to make it seem like it's not complex, but it is. Um, there is a theory. Okay, there's a book called I think it's called "Don't Move My Cheese." Don't move my. Who moved my cheese? And please let there be a cover where there's the mouse and the thing. Uh, there's no image of it. Okay, so there's a book called "Who Moved My Cheese," and the book, when did it come out? Okay, 19, is it 98? There it is. Yep, Who Moved My Cheese? An Amazing Way to Deal with Change in Your Work and in Your Life, published on September 8, 1998. Best-selling work, a motivational business fable by Spencer Johnson. And it's about characters who live in a maze and look for cheese to nourish them and make them happy. And there's four characters. And so the reason I bring up Who Moved My Cheese is that's funny. That's that's funny. Shinobi says, I really appreciate that the Tales of the Valiant did that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Circles. I mean, there's all kinds of like wording, and that's a get. This is just a semantics thing. Sometimes we don't need to change rules. Sometimes we need to change the semantics, the words. Armor class isn't just armor. If you have a dex mod in it, maybe it should be called defense or protection or evasion or something like that. Some people, hey, Pathfinder, diversion off of Dungeons and Dragons, had we're going to have a touch AC and an armored AC. So yes, you're wearing plate mail and you can't be air quotes hurt or hit, but there's a touch AC. If all I have to do is throw a Molotov cocktail at you, that means all I need to do is touch you to have you engulfed in flame. It's not a matter of your armor, right? Protecting you or something, right? Oh, I'm going to shoot a web at you, or I'm going to throw a net over you. Your armor doesn't keep you protected. It just means it's touch AC. And there's an easy way to do it, right? Mathematically, it's easy. Just have your armor class, which is 10, take 10, which, and plus a modifier, which here's another thing. Like if you tell people, well, armor class is just taking 10 on a D20. And people are just like, what? That's exactly what armor class is in fantasy gaming. It's taking 10 on a D20. So you don't roll the dice. But if you wanted to roll dice to have like an opposed roll, just subtract 10 from ascending armor class, and then you roll a d20 and you could have a competing. Now, most people don't want to keep rolling. But if you want to be very active in it, that's how you would do it. So, side note, uh, Who Moved My Cheese depicts one mouse who constantly gets their cheese by almost being killed by removing a small piece of cheese from the mousetrap. The other mouse taps them on the shoulder, points up at the table, and says, hey, we could both climb up the table and get that bigger block of cheese with zero threat to our lives. And the person goes, stop bothering me. I'm still concentrating on getting this small piece of cheese out of the mousetrap. And sometimes in game, when we as designers um, look at game design, sometimes we look at it and we look at it as the mousetrap. Can we just step away from the mousetrap? Because we're doing the same. We are increasing hit points is not a logical progression on making this more interesting. Like listening to the podcast I did the other day, he's like, "What? Let's make combat like a puzzle." Right? Instead of having hit points and having 680 hit points to denote the how dangerous the enemy is, and all we're doing is just whittling a number down and it's uninteresting. Why don't we have our big bad have 2, 3, 5, 7 stacked, not resistances, 7 stacked puzzles you have to figure out to take down the baddie before placing the killing strike, all of this without numbers to kill the bad guy. So, using that as extrapolating that out as example, you have an enemy. I strike the enemy. Enemy goes down. Okay, enemy has armor on. Great. I have something that pierces armor. So I use my piercing attack. Boom, pierce. Or maybe there's multiple things, right? I use my restraining attack. Great. You restrain them. That means you can strike through their armor or their shield or whatever the case might be. I have a sundering skill. Okay, so I use my sundering. Bam! I knock the shield aside because that's what my character does. Great. Okay, they still have armor on. Okay, I come in with my piercing spear. Boom. All right, third person. Great. You've gotten rid of 2 of their advantages. Great. I'm going to hit them and strike them. Boom, they're down. And imagine like powerful enemies having things where you must um dis uh disable the ritual. I'm talking fantasy here. Disable the ritual, deactivate the computer system, um, take out the power, beamed power from the satellite for the force field, things like that. And then, okay, now that you've done that, all right, they are constantly regenerating. All right, we need a antitoxin. All right, let's get the antitoxin to boom. Okay, now they're not regenerating. Great. The biologically crazy monster behind the force field is loose now. Okay, well, hey, my laser weapon is doing nothing to it. Oh, it needs to be electrified. All right, let's try to find electric, you know, shock the thing. And I know it sounds complicated, and my analogy is not working the way I want it to, but you get the point that someone is like, we don't need hit points, or at least let's design something where it doesn't use that. For example, not just there's a game that's been kickstarted that uses a tarot deck to design your character and to do all of the randomization in the game. And I love the idea of like tarot decks, playing cards, randomizers that aren't dice but actually tell you what's going on. And I love that kind of thing. I wish the Fantasy Flight games that use those narrative dice, I wish they weren't. I wish they were less dice and more narration rather than having to roll multiple dice and then count down to a specific narration. I don't know. Drew says, as much as I like some ideas that 13th Age had, they really went insane with hit point and damage values in that game. Yeah, what is it? It only goes to 10th level, and each level progression is like it's like a power fantasy. And yeah. Uh 13th Age, is that the one with the one unique thing? Uh, uh, one unique thing. Yes. I believe is it 13th Age? I can't remember. Yeah. And if you just type that in, there's so many things. Mm-mm-mm. Hmm. What is? I just found something very strange. Um, Saddest thing. Someone wrote the saddest review I've ever written and talks about the one unique thing. And wow, 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 wow. I'm not going to read all this out, but yeah, 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 yeah. It's very strange because I think in game design, yeah, Shinobi says I'm currently playing a game of it, and I like it. It is the game with the one unique thing. Thank you very much. Yes, it is. And and there's also, by the way, um, games that have that, like the one unique thing, games that don't have a skills list, but basically you have these you write down backgrounds or knowledges or experiences, and then you apply it when you roll dice. If it narratively works in the game, then you apply it. That is a design example of, as Drew has educated me on, the fruitful void, meaning like we have a rule for this, but this rule is so open that it is designed to allow you to fit it into your gaming experience. And that sometimes there are people who want very strict rules about things because they don't know, they are unaware of the reaction of other people around them. Now, me personally, I call these like bullshit detectors, right? Because some players are don't want to play the game as a fantasy in their imagination. What they really want is a fantasy in their personal lives. They want to feel like they're better or more superior than the people at the table. It is a psychological rejuvenation for them. And those type of people who want to impress their friends or impress strangers that they're playing with, those players that want to get over, they're not playing the game, they're trying to game the game and game the person across the table from them. A lot of these rules light, rules ephemeral, I'm not even going to say rules light, rules ephemeral systems, one unique thing, games that have no skill lists, but you get to pick the talents you have. Games like game systems like Fate, where you write down your high concept, you write down your aspects, and the other people at the table agree to a definition of what that means. Those are individuals that, um, I find that those game systems turn some players off. Now, it could turn them off because they've had horrible experiences with draconian game masters and storytellers and such. Others are out to do it because they have some form of they're trying to puff their chest out. They are trying to uh they're not trying to play the game and their character in a fantasy world. They are trying to impress people socially in some weird way around the table, like a person who plays chess and they're like, well, I'm a better chess player than everybody else here, and it's a competition, but everyone else doesn't realize that they're in this race. And games like that point something out, like, for example, I can see horror stories of someone who comes into 13th age and gets to pick a one unique thing, and their one unique thing is so world breaking and game breaking that it doesn't make sense. Like, I can see someone picking a one unique thing, like, well, my one unique thing is I have a black orb, and all I have to do is crush it into my hand and it goes off like a nuclear bomb. Or my one unique thing is I am the scion, I am the birth, I am a direct birth to the greatest noble family in the entire realm. So, and then that player is like, well, that means I've got infinite riches. I can tell people anywhere what to do because they would never touch me because I'm related to. And you're just rolling your eyes like, oh, so you just wanted to be able to walk through this world, right? You didn't want to have drama or conflict or something, right? My one unique thing is I can pass through walls and never be touched by anything as long as I decide to. I remember playing with a person that wanted to play Fate, and they were like, "Can I pick an aspect that I'm good at everything?" And I just shook my head, like, seriously, like we're not actually having this conversation, are we? And they're like, "No, no, I want to be good at everything," and they eventually got it, but I knew, and they were like, "Well, I was just joking." And I was like, "Yeah, you were. Yeah, yeah, you weren't joking. You got caught." And as game designers, sometimes we'll even see games that are designed with guardrails because people just get out of hand. Your dead man says, "Yeah, define good." Yeah, yeah, you define good. I can't. I see you. I see you coming around the corner and getting around my defenses and clocking me one, right? Right, dead man. Yeah, I mean, uh, anyway, I just wanted to get that off my chest because I listen to a lot of podcasts and I love game design podcasts. I love Dave Thalmavor's reviews of many different types of role playing games. I love Ben Milton's reviews of the OSR games. And I love these reviews and world building and things like so many things. I think it's Just a World, YouTube, Just a, what is her name? Uh, just a World? Is it Just a World Away? Give a shout out to this individual. I think it's, no, 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 that's not it. That's not it. Let me get to my subscription list. And no, that's not it. Hmm. Why isn't she up there? That's odd. Anyway, I found someone who's brand new, South African. I'm quickly paging through a bunch of my. I haven't listened to it a couple days, so and I listen to a lot of long form stuff. So I'm just like, where the hell? But anyway, um, having listened to or like a world building and things like that, it's like, oh, there's some great ideas in here. I love these ideas. I love the just in time. Thank you. There it is. There it is. Almost 400 videos. Let's. Where can I? Come on, just go to the channel. There it is. Bam. All right, let's copy this and paste this here. It's another. Here's an individual, small channel, 4,500 ish people. Um, Talks about politics and economics and things like that in a very like positive, uplifting. Like it's very much a writers and role players type of channel. I love it. Yep, yep. I really love it. And one of the things that really drew me to this channel, amongst many others, in terms of world building and things like that, is that the idea of design sometimes this design spiral that we go through. I want something brand new. I'm going to design this new thing, and then we get pushback, and we go, we don't want to do that, and then and such. Sometimes we are, and here's the arrogance in us as game designers. We say to ourselves, and we want to show to the community, um, there's a better way to do this, right? There, listen, if you just follow along, there's a much better way. It's like a chef that says, you really don't need to boil the pasta the way you do it. You could actually make this there's a better way to do this thing, right? I remember being resistant against that, this dumb thing, against making bacon. I used to make bacon in a pan, and someone was like, you could really, without all the grease popping all over your stove. I use a gas stove. I love gas stoves. I'm not an all electric person, so we use gas here, and at least I have all my life. And the idea was like you could pop it in the oven, it cooks evenly. You just get a baking sheet and put foil around the edges, and then that way you could get the bacon out the grease and it doesn't pop all over. And then you just let it cool down a little bit, and you just crumple up the aluminum foil. And I was just like, wait, what? What? you know, and yeah, yeah, RPG Big Drive, the world building channel. Yes, yes, yes. And there and she's a gamer too. So it's not just writing. It's not like a writer, because I listen to um publishing channels because I love that aspect. Movie review channels, novel review channels, television review channels, because it rubs my geekdom. But yeah, those are things that just like, wait a minute, like maybe there's a better way, like, or maybe that thing wasn't designed the way you think it was designed. I mean, we all poke holes at fantasy economic systems, and like or how games don't often these fantasy games don't have, how do you handle a horde of skeletons, or how do you do war, or sailing ships, how do we do that? And I just roll my eyes, like, because it wasn't intended for that. It was never intended for that. Now there's a way we can do it, and we can agree on how we can do it, but don't stress yourself out. It wasn't intended for that purpose. And um, so, like, Dead Man understands this. Eclipse Phase came out, big thick books, great quality. I mean, damn, first edition, second edition, and the first thing people were just like, "Well, I flipped through the book and there's no starship battle thing in here. Why isn't there any starship battles?" And I'm just shaking my head, like, because that's not what it was about. The gamers, they're like, dude, you can beam your brain from Mars to a moon orbiting Saturn. You don't need to travel there in a starship. And so sometimes we as designers sometimes bump up against these things. And listen, we will never stop doing this, but you're not alone. If you think a game doesn't need to have attack rolls, like, for example, just before I get out of here, what's the big thing that people are now like thrown by? The number of games that decide not to have an attack roll. It just goes for the damage roll. Now, me as a designer, I understand it as a countdown. It's not doing damage, it's a countdown. So if I have 10-point countdown and my enemy has a 30-point countdown, that at some point while we are attacking each other, we are whittling each other down through parries and dodging and endurance and exhaustion and fatigue and near misses and strikes and parries and bruising and falling down and being pressed back on your heels, pressing forward. And that is described by a number on our character sheets that boop, 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 boop starts going down. Now, my enemy happens to have a larger dial, but if I am skilled, I might survive, or myself and my 4 allies, all of which we have a 10 in our countdown, and our enemy has 30. Well, the 4 of us working together, we can whittle down that enemy. What it comes across as, and the easiest way to describe it is, I don't roll to hit, I just instantly do damage. And I think that descriptor, I think they are doing themselves a disservice, because people who they want to get into these games, it rubs them the wrong way, as if to say, well, damn, everybody automatically hits. And in my head canon, I'm going, no, there's a bunch of misses. You just happen to roll the one time that you do hit, right? It's the miss, miss, parry, parry, dodge, roll to the side. Now, boom, I roll it down. Bam, I got him. Boom. And then the enemy, miss, miss, miss. Oh, beats you back, rolled a hit, got into, snuck around the corner, bam, stabbed you. And miss, miss, miss. Okay, struck you across the skull. Boom, boom, boom. Hit you in the knee. You go down, and then bam, cracks you across the jaw, right? And I'm looking at it like, when we see action movies, there's a lot of misses, and then boom, there's a strike. A couple of misses. Sophie, what the hell are you doing? Yeah, I heard you. Producer in the background. Guys, I've just been given. Anyway, yeah, she's feeling a little bit embarrassed. I know you're embarrassed there, kitty kitty. It's all right. She tried to jump up on something and couldn't make it. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for being. I didn't talk anything about Obsidian Star. I apologize, but technically I did because the idea of like getting rid of like armor class and hit points and initiative and all those kind of things, or replacing them, is a thing that we as designers come across amongst so many other design elements that we try to bring into role-playing games, including the simple fact that sometimes even the words and terminology we want to use. By the way, Drew, I love friction as one. We have to. There's there has to be a way for us to have a live discussion without you having the need to be present, if that makes sense. Like not having your face and or not having to have your voice if you don't want that. There's got to be something. I gotta do something. So anyway, Shinobi says I always enjoy watching these videos. I had fun. I'm I'm good. Oh, okay, okay. Just making sure because listen, I feel like I get things off my chest, and you guys let me do that. Others may look at it and go, "This is some bullshit," right? And click, they don't like it, which is fine. But so, by the way, guys, let me reinsert this. If you are part of the live show or you're listening in on the live show, and you're like, oh, type something in, or a subject matter, or a mode of thought, or direction that you would like. Because I'm here. I'm seated of pants. I don't like scripted content. I'm sorry. I don't like scripted content from me. I think I'm horrible at it. I mean, I suppose I could read things out to you, like intros to role playing games, and see what that's like. Like if I opened up a random book you didn't know and started reading the intro, would that be something you'd be interested in? I've thought about like doing shorts, because I smaller videos and shorts for the channel. I don't know if anybody would be interested, or if that would draw attention to the channel. I'd have to carve out some space for that, but yeah, I might, like, I would have to not stream during one of these live streams to do that, which means less live streams. But then I could take one, like, let's say hump day, let's say like a Wednesday, and instead on that day I could make like 5 to 10 really small videos, and then that would broadcast more marketing for the channel or something like that. So let me know what you guys think. Of course, I'm always going to go back to the Fermi paradox, because there's some, I don't know, there's maybe a good 5 to 10 that I think deserve to have some attention, even though Fermi paradox filters are like number in like the 50s plus. Not going to go through all those, but many of the high ones as well. Still doing some design, and things like that. Yeah, Drew says your shorts seem popular, but I don't like them. See, I'm kind of with you. I'm old school. I my attention span is expansive, and I I'm not a memeable person. I like people. I love listening to people explain themselves and talk openly and delve into the corners of their thought. Now, I like a meme if it's like, we hear quotes for us old grognards. Memes were used to be things called quotes without a picture behind it, right, or a video behind it. But many people, a bird in hand is worth two in a bush was an old meme, right? If you think about it, a penny saved is a penny earned, whatever. Um, but as far as gaming goes, we see a lot of these like you're wrong and I'm right kind of shorts and memes and things like that. But there's some that are pretty educational, and I wonder if I could do that. Like Isaac Arthur started putting out some shorts and stuff for his channel, and they come across my feed, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty interesting. Thank you, Isaac, for 30 seconds of something that I'd prefer to listen to 45 minutes of, but okay. you know. Anyway, guys, have a great one. I got to get out of this place. Don't know when I'll ever come back. Anyway, thank you very much, of course, for spending your valuable time here. I hope in turn I can make change for your tabletop role playing design experiences in the future and elsewhere. Anyway, have a great one. I'll see you tomorrow, bright and early. Peace and tranquility.